Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and Triumphant Light, the fourth expansion in Pokemon TCG Pocket, which is a mini expansion released around a week ago. And it's actually a really interesting set with a lot of different pieces in it, different like combo ideas and strong Pokemon. There are 5 EXs as there are from every pack in Pokemon TCG Pocket, and well, regular pack, not the promo packs. And there's also the Arceus mechanic, and there are some good trainers and general support Pokemon as well, and just some really interesting Pokemon that I'm excited to get into. First of all, we have a bunch of honorable mentions here. I guess the first one I'll mention are like the berry Pokemon. None of those are on this list. I don't think any of them are particularly good. Maybe some are okay, and I'm underrating them a little. I'll talk about kind of how good these cards are. Honestly, I think it's close between a lot of them. I don't think there's like clear-cut best card. I mean, there's a few cards that are the best, but and then there's some cards that are like a little below that. But yeah, the berry cards are not that good though. Definitely a pretty weak archetype. A lot of the cards that refer directly to one card aren't super good. But anyways, those are not super great either. Then the first actual card here, I have 4 honorable mentions, then the top 10. And the first one is Heatran. Heatran is an Arceus card. And by the way, these are ranked in like within context of the game, taken into account, as well as within like a vacuum. Obviously, Heatran, its ability works with Arceus or Arceus EX in play, so I'm assuming you have that. But I'm ignoring like support for this or whatever cards, some, not entirely. So ideally, this would hold up in, say, a year from now. But anyways, Heatran can do 40 or 80 if it has damage on it for 2 fire. It has free retreat with the Arceus or Arceus EX in play. And it's kind of like the Rotom. Well, it has the same ability as the Rotom. Rotom is an attacker in different style decks. It's a pretty weak attacker. Heatran is obviously a fire type attacker. Arceus, I think like Fire Arceus isn't super impressive. But this is a way to play Arceus, or Arceus EX, I should specify. It's not a super impressive Pokemon on its own, though it's not bad. It's okay. Then we have one of the EXs. This is a bit of a spoiler. I will be talking about all the EXs in this video at some point, though they are not all in the top 10. But Probopass EX is kind of interesting. It's tanky. Well, I can get to that a little bit later, but it is metal. It has a bunch of HP, and its attack means it takes less damage from attacks. It's pretty weak as an attacker, and it's like moderately expensive. Metal is, you got Dialga EX, but Dialga EX isn't great. Comparing it to stuff like Moltres EX and Manaphy, being 2 energies is a really massive downside. And then also, honestly, this is just a personal preference thing. I mean, it's my personal list anyways, but the tanky Pokemon are kind of terrible to play, not because they're super bad, though generally I found that they don't really get the job done, but also on top of that, and they create really long and boring games, and you're not really applying pressure. It gives your opponent the option to kind of do what they want, and they won't necessarily be taking 1 shots or 2 shots or even 3 shots. It obviously depends, but it's a Pokemon that you're not really getting to where you need to go, and might be relying on certain like Cyrus plays to actually take points. But you won't always have those open, so it's unfortunately just not strong enough, and it's not like super tanky, but it's okay. Then we have Garchomp EX. Garchomp EX is a card that at first I thought was pretty bad. The honorable mentions are like kind of ordered. I would say Garchomp EX is a little bit better than Probopass EX. I'm not sure. Originally, I thought it was pretty bad, but linear attack is pretty solid. This is a stage 2. It has 170 HP. And then it says linear attack is 50 to one of your opponent's Pokemon for 1 fighting. Dragon Claw is not very good. It's 100 for 3. Their attack, I mean, it could be worse, I guess, but it's not that much damage. It's decently expensive, and it's not stage 2. So, you're looking for a bit more than this, but then you have the first stack, which is like solid. It's decently efficient, and can be really nice for finishing off Pokemon or setting up Pokemon to then finish off with something else. Garchomp EX is okay. It's not amazing, and also it's like not great with Lucario, which is probably the most defining fighting Pokemon, but fighting's an interesting type. I've really said this since the beginning about the type, and it's still growing, and Garchomp EX is a piece within that, not like a super important piece. There are like, Hitmonlee, Marshadow, Lucario, and then I guess like Hitmonchan you could toss in there. There's a bunch of Pokemon in that list, but Garchomp EX is okay, and something you can choose to build around, though. I would not personally do that if you want to create a pretty solid list. And then the last card we have is Arceus. Arceus is very different than all the other cards in this list. Oh, it's not different than Arceus EX. It triggers the same things. It's a single prizer. Its attack's pretty bad. I've seen some people play Arceus. I've been playing, and I haven't seen anyone attack with it. Though you could. It's 100 for 4. It is all colorless. You discard a random energy from this Pokemon. Arceus EX is better than Arceus, but this is a single point Pokemon, so theoretically, this could be better than Arceus EX if you're not attacking. I mean, I guess it is, but yeah, it triggers the Arceus abilities, which is cool. At some point, I might make a whole video on the Arceus mechanic, but anyways, nothing really too crazy to say about it, but definitely a card worth playing. I said it can be better than Arceus EX, but there are times as well where you just need the Arceus in play, one of the Arceus or Arceus EXs, and then you just want as many as you can, so you can maybe toss in a third. I would not really ever expect to see a fourth between the two in the list, but I think a third is sometimes worth running, I guess. The 10th card on this list, however, is the Carnivine. Carnivine's a pretty interesting Pokemon. It's kind of you can kind of compare it to Heatran, I feel like, as the Arceus attackers. There is another Arceus Pokemon. Well, there's Arceus itself, but then there's another Pokemon with the I don't actually know the term. I've just been calling them like Arceus Pokemon. There's another Pokemon with a similar, I guess, a link ability. And this one says if you have Arceus or Arceus EX in play, attacks used by this Pokemon do 30 damage to your points active. Its base is 20 for 1 grass, and then it'll be boosted up to 50. 50 for 1 is a really, really good. I mean, it's not broken, but it's pretty good. Obviously, Farfetch, if you played early on, was good. And it wasn't amazing, but it was solid. And then now we have a few Pokemon that are 50 for 1 under certain conditions. Carnivine, I think, is the easiest to reach these conditions. I'm not sure. Skarmory's pretty easy, and there's a few. But anyways, Carnivine can do it pretty easily. Arceus and Arceus EX do have 2 retreat, I believe. So these cards are a little awkward to get out of the active, and so getting this into the active turn 1 or the first turn you attach energy, which is what you're trying to do, can be like a little awkward, but still it is pretty good, pretty efficient. Obviously, it doesn't really have really high upside, and you're already playing the Arceus and the Carnivine, and then you need something else to play, and we'll talk about Grass type later, but it just doesn't have great synergies, which is what's I think holding this card back. But it's a pretty solid card. It's a pretty good card, and definitely one that or don't be shocked if it becomes good, or if it never gets the right pieces and never really becomes good either. Then the next card I have is Crobat. Honestly, this might be one of my favorite cards, or this is probably my favorite card from the set. I'm not 100% sure, but its ability Cunning Link says that once during a turn, you can, if you have Arceus in play, one of those, then you may do 30 to your points active. This is kind of like Greninja, but it's more like Darkrai EX, and I don't know, it's pretty cool. I like abilities that ping your opponent's Pokemon. Obviously, unlike Greninja, you can't hit their bench, which Greninja's ability, I'd say is I don't know which is better, to be honest, assuming that you have the Arceus in play. I think Greninja's might actually be better. This is a free retreat, which is cool, I guess. It's tax 50 for 1 darkness, which is usable. It's not really a standout Pokemon. It's one that's cool, though. I don't know if it quite has a place within the metagame, but it's certainly a card I've seen, and I messed around with, and I've played against it a little bit, not that much. It's a cool card. It does have the same weakness as Arceus, which also is not ideal. Not that it's super tanky, especially for a stage 2. It's pretty bad, but it's an interesting Pokemon. Can increase your damage output by a substantial amount. Greninja's not. Sometimes it's there to increase the damage output to your points active and knock them out, but sometimes it's used to hit the bench to either knock them out on the bench once they run away, or to drag it up using Cyrus to ping a Pokemon with no damage on it at all. Crobat obviously can't do those things, but Crobat's an interesting Pokemon. Currently, evolution search is not great. Obviously, you have Pokeball for basics, and you can draw them easier because you'll start with a basic. But with evolutions, you can't search them out. Well, you can use Pokemon communication, but Pokemon communication is honestly not super good. It's all right. I mean, it's a card that's worth playing, but this is a card, and really any evolution, specifically stage 2, I'd expect to get a little better, especially Crobat. Crobat's a stage 2 where it's not going to do everything for you. It's not even the main piece. You obviously have Arceus in play, probably Arceus EX, and then at that point you can, Arceus EX is a solid attacker, but it's not a Pokemon that'll necessarily be great moving forward. We'll see how the Arceus archetype evolves. Then we have or Arceus Dex. There's a bunch of them. Then we have Glaceon EX. Glaceon EX is another card I like, another Pokemon that does damage using its ability. This says during Pokemon Checkup, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, do 10 to your opponent's active Pokemon. I said this was very similar to Poison, and it is, but it does have some really, really important differences. The first one is that it's not a special condition, so it won't be removed through the use of evolution and through the use of like switching out. I guess this is like the only thing that has different interactions, but there are ways for your opponent to remove this. So if they evolve, if they switch or whatever, then this will still work. It'll still hit the Pokemon, and then also if you get a knockout with it, you can still get damage on after they've been knocked out, which is kind of like the switching thing. But anyways, it's a really really solid ability. That's not like amazing. I mean, it's a little extra damage, but it's the same damage as like Druddigen. Its attack's not super good. I've talked about the evolutions a little bit. Obviously have a Vaporeon, which you could play, but you can only play 2 EVs, so Leafeon EX doesn't necessarily have a great place within the game, but it's not like bad. This card's interesting, one I definitely want to keep an eye out going forward and see what happens with the evolutions. So as good as Leafeon EX, but it's still solid. Definitely a card that is cool and all right, not amazing, especially with all the water EXs. You have just some really amazing ones. Honestly, the metagame right now, if you look at it, is like, where do I see this? It's kind of boring, but like it's kind of bad because we see Articuno EX and like Palkia EX, and these are just playing those Pokemon. I haven't ran into these too much, but I ran into them some, and they're apparently doing really well in tournaments right now, and they're like super boring. But anyways, yeah, those are really good cards, and then you could also have Gyarados EX as well as a really solid EX. So I'd probably put it at like the 4th best water EX. But still, it's a solid card and is definitely a different playstyle than those other Pokemon we are just trying to, with the basics, kind of like turbo through them. And then I guess a similar idea with Gyarados, but also power through them where they can't one-shot you. Anyways, the next card we have here is a trainer. The trainers in the set are amazing in the support Pokemon in general. Adaman is a supporter card which says during your opponent's next turn, all of your metal Pokemon take 20 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure how good Adaman is. It's like solid. Taking less damage is nice. Blue is half of this for any type of Pokemon. So this is obviously better for metal decks. Blue is not super good. It's not like an unplayably bad card. You can toss it in some things, but it's not great. Metal is a tanky-based type. As I said, the metal decks aren't super fun or super strong. You kind of give your opponent the options to do what they want. But Adaman is like nice damage reduction added on to some already existing damage reduction. I could see this card maybe moving down the list a little bit, but I think it's solid. And Dahlia EX is still a pretty like solid Pokemon. It has some versatility. Actually makes a really good use of Dawn. Definitely the best use of that I think I've seen in any deck. And so Adaman's like solid with that. Again, your opponent does have control. They can kind of go around it potentially, or like not hit you, or not go force a big play to go for a knockout because they won't get it. So it's still good though. I think Adaman is a really solid supporter. It's not like the best supporter in the game by any means, and it's not an auto include in every metal deck, but it's still pretty good. Then we have Sudowoodo, which is the next Pokemon here. I was talking about the fighting Pokemon. I didn't mention Sudowoodo. Sudowoodo is really, really good, I think. The fighting Headbutt does 20, but if your opponent's active as an EX, it does 30 more. And base of 20, comparing it to Hitmonchan, which is base of 30, it's worse, obviously, but it's not like that much worse if you're hitting a single point Pokemon, especially because you're kind of getting a lot of your damage from Lucario buffs in that situation. But this is a really solid Pokemon. Also, Arceus EX is seeing like a bunch of play. I think it's the main deck I'm seeing. Again, there are like different builds of it. But anyways, you're hitting that for a weakness. You're actually 2-shot, which is quite nice without any buffs. So Sudowoodo is a really solid Pokemon. It's definitely not flashy, but all the stuff I said about Carnivine, 50 for 2 or 50 for 1 is really nice. And this will generally hit the 50. Again, if you're not against an EX, it's not. And it does depend what your opponent's playing. But like, the metagame is really EX heavy. I mean, it always has been. So this is a card I'd expect to be pretty good going forward, and one of the main Pokemon within the fighting deck. The next card we have here, breaking into the top 5, is Celestic Town Elder. This is a card that I don't know how good it is, to be honest. When I first saw this, I thought this card was insane and going to be a new staple within the game. And then I've been, playing the game and like looking at what other people have been doing, and I haven't seen that. and it doesn't, this is different than the regular TCG, obviously. In the regular TCG, if this card was added and nothing like this was in the game, it would be insane. Generally, if your Pokemon are getting knocked out, I mean, it's only happening so many times, and it's a random basic, so the idea would be just to get back, obviously, the basic. If, say, you're getting an evolution line, and then you want the, another basic, like your basic got knocked out, you need to get to the stage 2. So that could be good, though that's like a little niche. And, I've talked about, like, I don't know how much I've talked about this, but supporters versus items, like, there's not that big of a difference. You'll generally have time to play most of your supporters when you like have them when you need them. So it's not like a massive issue spending your supporter for the turn to use this, but it's not a great feeling. It's definitely not the highest power level supporter. And then you could also use this in a basic focus deck to get more consistent value out of it, where you kind of know what you're getting, though not necessarily as high value out of it. But if you have like a two Articuno X's, you can play this, get after your first one gets knocked out. Obviously, if they knock out another one, your opponent will still win, but having an extra one in play is kind of good because it allows you to force your opponent to find like a Guzma or Sabrina or something, or sorry, Cyrus or Sabrina, and at that point they might not have that, and that could be good. Is it good? Probably it's not super meaningful, but this card, I feel like it's gonna be good. We don't have much discarding right now, like really at all. We have like Garchomp, and that's about it. But I think this is a card that could be really good in the future and one to keep an eye out for. Right now it's pretty mediocre, to be honest, but I expect it to be kind of amazing at some point. Then we have Irida. This is a supporter card, the last of the supporter cards. I think I mentioned them all. Yeah, I mentioned them all. Oh, there's only 4. But Irida says heal 40 damage for each of your Pokemon that has any water energy attached. I'll probably talk about this again later, but people are putting more water energy into decks because of Irida. Giving you access to healing. It's solid healing. It's a little weaker than Erica, I'd say, but it does depend on the circumstances. It can be stronger if it's like the same Pokemon you're targeting, but still, Irida is pretty nice. It's solid healing. Again, supporters. It's not like that much worse playing a supporter than an item. So this is like substantially better than Potion. And actually can play, not that you wouldn't also play Potion, but you do have, this is really solid healing, and it can be played in any deck playing water energy, not just water Pokemon. Now there are water Pokemon that don't play water energy as well, but I think this is probably the better of those two options. It is a really solid healing card and really versatile as well, which is what to me makes it so good. And this card isn't like super broken, but it's pretty good, and one I expect to be probably an important part of the game as the game continues to develop, because healing is nice. Healing is, especially with like the Shaymin that was in the, I think it was in, what set was the Shaymin in? The healing one, I think, yeah, A2, Space Time Smackdown, there you go. I was forgetting the name. Which heals 10 from each of your Pokemon. I've been really liking that Pokemon, even in decks that aren't super tanky. And I think Irida is nice. I think it's like, better than Adaman, obviously. I have it up higher on the list, and it is a better like typing fit, but Irida is a really solid Pokemon or card that you can tech into decks playing different Pokemon. And then we have Arceus EX at number 3. This is honestly pretty weird to rank as well. Arceus EX as an attacker is good. It's not absolutely insane, but it's a pretty solid attacker. It has high HP, good damage output. Its ability is like almost useless as well, which is kind of annoying because it like always pops up. But anyways, you have an ability which yeah, I've never seen it come into effect. But anyways, you're immune to special conditions. But your attack here is very solid, doing it does 130 if you have a full bench. You don't always have a full bench. I played with and against this card a decent amount, and it's not, you don't always have it, but you can. It's not like that hard to have. Generally, the decks where you would miss it are the ones where you're playing like stage 2 lines and stuff. But it's it's still not that hard to find. And 110's not even that bad. If you get just 2 Pokemon down, which you probably have, Arceus EX is just a really solid attacker, and then obviously it enables all those other like Arceus Pokemon. There isn't really that much synergy among them, other than the fact that you obviously need to play them together based on what they say. But Arceus EX is a like a good attacker. You pair it with like Carnivine, and those are your attackers, Arceus EX and Carnivine. You pair it with like Crobat, you pair it with really any of them. Most of them are like okay. Not all of them are great. I mean, some of the stage 2s like Tyranitar I don't think is very good. Magnezone I actually think is okay though. I'm someone who generally says bad stuff about stage 2s like all the time, and evolution Pokemon about Pocket specifically, but yeah, there are some solid options, and I mentioned Crobat obviously. And you have some interesting ideas here. You're generally a little, I mean, you probably want to be hitting 140. You do have Giovanni to hit that number if you want, and you could use Rocky Helmet as well. But you're obviously generally a little short. You're just doing 130, but it's still a really good Pokemon. There's not really too much to break down here. It's colorless. It's not really going in any deck. It's the focus of the deck probably if it's in it. You're not really looking for a secondary attacker, but you could do stuff. Obviously, there's the Arceus stuff, and then you could use like Darkrai EX or something. Arceus isn't that really. It's not a Pokemon that is just amazing and broken, but it's pretty good, and obviously the focus of the set as well. The next card we have here, the number 2 card is Shaymin. Shaymin has an ability. I talked about this card before a few times, and I actually misread it the first time I talked about it, but I said so. It's as long as this Pokemon is on your bench, your active basic Pokemon's retreat cost is 1 less, only reduces the attack cost of basics, but that's fine. This is pretty good. Also, if it gets somehow put into the active, it does not have free retreat, which is like a thing. I've never really seen that have it like matter, but it is a little annoying, I guess. Or maybe I've seen it matter. Anyways, Shaymin is it's really good. It's really versatile. It's a card you can really toss into any deck. Its value isn't super high. At some point, I might give these cards rankings, and based on versatility and power level, its power level is like okay, giving a reduced retreat cost, but it's not like amazing. But it is really versatile. I think this could be an option in essentially every deck. Obviously, like Articuno EX or Palkia EX, the solo decks, you'd never play this in it. But outside of those, it's well, there actually is a little bit of value there, but not much. But Shaymin is really good in a lot of different decks. There's actually the 2 Shaymins. There's this Shaymin and the other one I was talking about, and I think this is the first Pokemon where I'm like, it'd be really nice if you could maybe sometimes play 2 of one and 1 of the other or something like that. They're both really solid cards, but anyway, Shaymin is really good for getting whatever you need into the active and out of the active and things like that, and it works pretty well. You still, a lot of the Pokemon have 2 retreats, especially a lot of these EXs like Darkrai EX or Arceus EX or Dalgate EX, but it is nice to allow you to have a little more versatility with moving your Pokemon around. And there are times when it's really like just perfect. I mean, it's essentially like a free X speed every turn. X speed's a very good card. Again, this is only basics and not in itself, but that doesn't matter too much. Shaymin is it's a really high value. It's like a good card. Again, not super flashy really at all. Its stack's like usable, I guess, but it's pretty bad. But it is a really, really amazing ability. And the top card we have here is Leafeon EX. This one was one that I definitely underestimated at the beginning when I first saw it. It's kind of like Magneton. It's not exactly like Magneton, but it's similar. You have the ability Force Breath. Once during a turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may get a Grass Energy from your Energy Zone and attach it to one of your Grass Pokemon. This is really good with Celebi EX, and it's like okay with some other stuff as well. But Leafeon EX is a Pokemon that attacks for only 1 Grass Energy as well, so you can play other types of energy, like Water Energy, which is what I've been seeing a lot. I said Arceus is the deck I'm seeing the most, but I've also seen a ton of this. I think it started with this and then moved to Arceus, but anyways, Leafeon EX is a Pokemon that can accelerate to itself, so you can use Water Energy to use Irida, and then also use Erica, and have just a bunch of healing options. It's not like insanely tanky, but it's tanky enough. And then you can use Celebi EX, get a ton of energy on that as well. Leafeon EX is just so good at getting energy into play. I said it's kind of like Magneton because of the thing that you don't necessarily need to be playing the energy type of, this Pokemon, that it needs to pay its attack because you can get it just from the energy zone from the ability. But though you can play Grass Energy as well, but it's a deck that, or it's a card that can be used in different decks, not to the same level of Magneton / Magnezone, where that's like a tech option into decks like, or I guess it's the main focus, but like you have that plus Darkrai EX, or that plus Skarmory, or that plus like Fighting or something. You really do need to be playing a Leafeon EX plus some other stuff that's like similar to it that can get like similar value. Celebi EX, yeah, Mega EX, maybe some water stuff if you are working within that like water deck. But it is a really good card. Its ability is amazing. You could use multiple in a turn theoretically if you use 2 Leafeon EXs, though I would not. I don't think I've seen that. Also, it is an evolution. You do have like Glaceon EX or Vaporeon. Is that good? Vaporeon doesn't like really interact with Leafeon EX well at all. It's pretty bad. This is only into Grass Pokemon. Vaporeon's only, I think it's from and to water Pokemon. And it's water energy. Yeah, so it's like just horrible interactions. They're not really doing anything. Glaceon EX probably, I mean, it's not super good. It's okay. But Leafeon EX is still it's an amazing Pokemon. Probably the best Stage 1 EX in my opinion. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head. I'll actually search, I guess. And we see, yeah, Mega EX is fine. So, Weavile EX is fine. Um, Executor EX at least sees a bunch of play, though it's not a super amazing Pokemon, but it's solid. And yeah, Leafeon EX I think is pretty clearly the best, though, in my opinion. Being able to take really good advantage of lots of different cards, being really versatile. But tell me down below in the comments what your favorite cards are from this new set from Pocket. Triumphant Light's I think really cool, but I think I'd like to see a little more, honestly, from the Arceus mechanic. The Arceus mechanic's fine. It's nice to have, though I feel like it could have been cooler. But the EXs have really impressed me from this set. But tell me what you think down below in the comments. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.